Unmute yourself. Oh, you're good.
Good? I'm on.
Good.
Okay. Wow, this is so different than standing in a room looking at people that I know and talking to you directly. I see Ray there. I'm not sure who else is on from out in Ojai area. Ray is a friend of mine who actually lived at the dam site for, I think, more than a decade. So thanks for being here tonight, Ray, and everybody else. This is, as you know, an endless lifetime endeavor, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. Bill, do you want to give me the control? I'll share screen. I can do it straight here from the share screen thing.
Yeah,
right?
go for it. I added you as a co-host, so you should be able to do that.
Okay, good. Those who've seen this talk before, you're going to see it again, and there's new tidbits in there. So for those who haven't seen this, you're going to get sort of the whole story. Let's see if this shares.
And so while Paul's setting it up, I just wanted to mention that if you want to put your questions in the chat box and your comments, then Bill will share that with Paul later after the meeting. So keep them coming.
Yeah, add those questions for sure. Yeah, there you go, Paul. Perfect. Looks great.
Okay, you guys are seeing that?
Yep.
Nice. So there she is in all her glory, Matilija Dam. We actually, the chapter formed the Matilija Coalition in 2000 to begin to really coordinate the NGO, the local grassroots effort around the removal of this dam. But I got involved in this project before then, so I'm going to kind of give you the background of how, you know, Surfrider, little small chapter in Ventura, kind of got deeper and deeper into this large watershed program. You know, first of all, I always like to bring this home to the thing that's driving me on why I do what I do is I've known my whole life the science around climate change, and seeing it unraveling now is actually quite alarming. And so the big question is how are we going to adapt to this, because we're obviously not on a nonstop road here. So you can see in the map that, yeah, you can probably see my cursor. There we are, one of the little red spots, one of the fastest warming places in the nation. And this picture's from this winter before I did another presentation, and I pulled this off the web as Australia was burning. And if you guys remember, Australia burned about a decade ago, and we thought that that was pretty extreme. And then, you know, like 5 years later, it happened here in California. So when I saw this happening last year or this winter in Australia, I was like, well, I think we know what's coming. And sure enough, you know, all the Northern California's on fire right now. And if you guys have not seen this website, weatherwest.com, this is a climate scientist who posts you know, a blog weekly or every few weeks. But this was his post today, looking at the month of August, which was hottest on record in the American West. So with that, you know, one of our big concerns is what happens along the coast, obviously, and this is what got me involved in Surfrider, was surfing the waves out at the point at C Street. And when I first went to a chapter meeting, the big issue was what's going to happen with the bike path because of the erosion that was happening. And I said I knew something about that as an ocean engineer, and maybe I could help. So I started documenting, taking pictures, and trying to educate decision makers on what the issues were surrounding this beach erosion problem and how we could react and adapt to it. And you can see at one point in time, there was plans to build a seawall the entire length of the point, at which point is like, do you want a bike path on top of riprap rock, beach. So you can see here the before and after of the Managed Retreat project, and I think this is a huge success. It's been recognized nationwide as an example of coastal adaptation in the face of rising seas. And so I think here in Ventura, we're really kind of leading the way on some of this stuff. You can see here an overview of the point. This is the area that we retreated in. And, you know, you guys have, most of you have heard all this before, but this area down here is the remainder of the pay parking lot on the fairgrounds property that is part of the second phase of the project that planning is underway for right now. And we're hoping to enact something like this where we actually have restored this buffer zone along the front of the bike path, and the parking lots all moved back to Shoreline Drive. So, like I said, this is the issue that really got me involved with Surfrider initially, all the way back in 1995 was when we really started the Surfers Point campaign. And if you really take a step back and zoom out, you can see that that little thin strip of beach is actually part of a much larger landform here, which is the Ventura River Delta. And once we started to understand how important watershed management was to coastal management, and how really everything that we do on land affects what happens along the coast, and we can't really address the problems that we have. I mean, think about plastic trash going out the storm drains. All of this goes back to what we do on land. And in this case, this is our watershed, the Ventura River watershed, and you can see all the way from the river mouth at Surfers Point, 16 miles up to the Matilija Dam, which is in the Los Padres National Forest. Many of you have been up there. If you haven't, I recommend taking a drive up the river and checking it out sometime. You can't go to the dam directly, but you can take Matilija Canyon Road up behind the dam, and I'll have some pictures of that in a minute. So Matilija Dam is really a relic of a dam building era that occurred throughout the 20th century. And at the time, it was really thought that every drop of water should be collected and diverted for human use, and there was really no point in letting it go to waste. Matilija Dam was the first project on the Ventura River to try and address drought resilience. At the time, farmers were already starting to pump their wells dry. But this is something that is a nationwide issue. All of these dams are aging, and the average lifespan of a dam is 50 years around the world, mainly because of sedimentation. Most dams fill with sediment fairly rapidly, as is the case with Matilija Dam. But all of these dams are now posing a threat not only to the communities that live below them, but the ecosystems upon which they depend. So here's some historic images. You can see that Matilija was always a run-of-the-river dam, which means that during high flow events, it would spill over and flow downstream. So it never was intended to capture all the flows in Matilija Canyon. But because of faulty concrete and construction, the dam had to be lowered. This is about a 30-foot notch that was taken out of the dam in 1965, and then this is what it looks like today, like the first picture that I showed you. So here's a diagram that shows that notch that was taken out, and then in the 70s they came in and took the stair step notch out of the side just to stabilize that concrete that was kind of sitting up there waving in the breeze. So upon its initial construction at 7,000 acre feet, many of you may know that Lake Casitas is really the primary backup water supply now for the region, and Lake Casitas has a supply of about 250,000 acre feet. So put it in perspective, 7,000 acre feet was never a lot of water, and it didn't store much water for very long. This is, you know, almost 20 years ago now. This is what the reservoir was looking like, and even then it had very little storage. And the reason is that the reservoir was lowered because of dam safety concerns, but also the extreme sediment yield that we have from these coastal watersheds in Southern California. This is some of the highest sediment yields in the nation. And after we have fires like the Thomas Fire, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, these reservoirs will quickly fill up. So this is right after the Thomas Fire up in Matilija Canyon, and you can really see how dramatically the watershed changes following the fire and how much sediment gets washed down the river. The riverbed that you see here was, before the fire, was large boulders and cobbles and completely buried in silt and sand initially following the fire. And it was pretty ugly for a while and impacted water quality in the Ventura River for a long time. But the interesting thing was that the following year, we saw for the first time in a couple of decades, an appreciable increase in sedimentation in the reservoir. And this big delta that formed on the right bank, looking downstream, came in after one of the storms. And it was not surprising after the fire that this would happen. Here's a aerial shot from a drone looking, obviously looking upstream from above the dam. And here it was interesting because we started seeing all this vegetation filling in the reservoir, and all of that is like these tule reeds that started sprouting, indicating that it was actually pretty shallow there. This is probably, 1 to 2 feet deep right in this area.
You won't want to do it again. You won't want to stay in it. You won't want to press into it. So find a spot that's just right at the edge of your comfort zone.
Okay. Yeah, if somebody is not muted, please mute yourselves.
I got them muted, Paul. Thanks.
Okay. So I've been tracking what's been happening up there this summer since the county drew down the reservoir, at least the water. And you can see what it looks like when the water's drained back there. I just ran into a guy, Zach, with, was that Zach that I saw signed in? Maybe it was. Who was up there with a drone when I happened to be up there taking pictures one day. So these are the photos that I've been taking periodically. This is just from the road above the dam. This was back in March, and you can see the area that I showed the sediment came in over here. The next storms pushed sediment in on this side. And it was pretty interesting when Casitas drained the reservoir for diversion in March. This created this big channel here, and you could see it cutting through all the sand that had come in up at the top of the reservoir. And then back around 4th of July, the county drained it again. And this was in response to concerns from the Division of Dam Safety that they didn't want any more storage back here. You can see how much reeds had filled in this area. And this was at the beginning of the draining, and I went up there every day for a couple days, and then I started going up there kind of weekly. All of these pictures are on my blog on venturariver.org. You can see the whole sequence of this, but it was really interesting to watch the evolution of this channel, the way it meanders through the sediments here. That's because this is a microcosm of the way that we're planning on removing the dam. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But you can see here, after a month, how much the channel had cut down. You can see here it's probably 2 to 3 feet cut down. And as it's doing that cutting, it's moving fine sediment that's getting transported down the river. And the river downstream, this is at the Camino Cielo Bridge, has been pretty murky like this ever since that has happened. So that's going on a couple of months now. So I'm going to talk about the removal of the dam. I didn't really talk about the reasons for removal, but obviously it's not really serving any purpose any longer. It's trapping the sediment that we really want on our beaches, the sand and gravel and cobble that make up the beach at Surfers Point and all the way down into Pierpont. But also because of the endangered steelhead trout. And Matilija, Ventura River is not unique in the region as having its headwaters blocked by dams and obsolete structures like this. So there's a lot of reasons for removing the dam. And we ended up completing a feasibility study with the Army Corps of Engineers in 2004, where they looked at the entire river and modeled what would happen if the dam came out, and where that sediment would go and how to manage the sediment. And I'm not going to go into the details of that project except for to point out that removing the dam all the way up here entails modifications to 2 bridges and 3 levees and water supply facilities downstream, all of which would potentially, theoretically, be impacted by the removal of the dam. This, I think, was about 2009. So 5 years after the report was completed, we were still fighting with the Corps over what to do with the fine sediment. And that's hence the sign down here. It says, even though everyone agrees it should be done, why has there been no removal of Matilija Dam? Hey man, silt happens. And it was all about silt, war over silt, and what you could do with the silt and where you could put it so it wouldn't kill everything downstream and destroy the world as we know it, which was not actually the case. So in the meantime, like I said, there are these dams all over the country and all over the state, all of them not doing us any good and potentially threatening communities downstream. The Oroville Dam, if you remember, this was in the news for a little while, and in this case, the big rains had overtopped the dam and went down the overflow spillway, which was not adequately maintained, and the whole spillway started to dissolve and unravel, and they almost lost the largest reservoir in the state of California. Downstream, it would have flooded Sacramento and many, many miles of California. So anyway, because of this, the State Division of Dam Safety is starting to look a little bit more closely at dams statewide. And if you look up on their website, you will see that Matilija Dam is extremely high hazard, in poor condition, and there are no reservoir restrictions currently. That was back a few years ago. So in the meantime, we had gone through a long process and hired an outside consultant to take another look at dam removal based upon the other dams that have been removed elsewhere in the Western United States. And we came to agreement that we could look at actually releasing the silt downstream and letting the river do the work rather than really expensive plan by the Army Corps of Engineers. So this was based on the Condit Dam removal. I hope you all did your homework and watched Damnation, because if you do, there's a sequence in there where the Condit Dam is actually dynamited. The hole in the bottom of the dam is dynamited, and the whole reservoir back here drains in a matter of a day. And they came back the following few months later, removed the dam, and the following year people were kayaking and river rafting down this reach of river that had been dammed up for almost 100 years. So it's been demonstrated that, you know, rivers pretty much can restore themselves if you get out of the way and let them do the work. And we have been pursuing that ever since. I'll just go back to say that we were looking at building, we're still looking at 2 12-foot diameter holes in the base of the dam. These would be drilled almost all the way through, and then we'd wait for a large storm event that we knew was on the horizon and coming, and then be ready to dynamite those holes and do a blast just like Condit Dam. So pretty exciting, but there's a lot of details to be worked out, not the least of which is funding. And so we were running up against funding shortages with the Corps of Engineers, and the state of California was really carrying the ball on a lot of the work that was done. But after Damnation came out and there was sort of a focus on Matilija Dam, we were able to attract the attention of the Hewlett Foundation's Open Rivers Fund, which committed at the time 175,000, but since this, I don't know how much they put in. They're probably over $1 million at this point. So we're getting private funding coming in, really supporting a lot of the work that's being done. In fact, we've been able to hire a full-time grant writer and project coordinator that is really instrumental in the progress that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. As soon as we had the go-ahead from the consensus to go ahead with this project, we started writing grants, and we wrote a grant for over $3 million to California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and that's the grant that really a lot of the planning right now is being funded by. We're kind of 3 years into that project and actually running a little bit behind. And one of the things they did was go back and drill more holes in the reservoir and you know, assess the sediments and take another look and make sure that they understood exactly what was back there. So that was one of the first sort of easy things to do, is go back and do this field work. That field report is complete and on the web now. So our strategy has been to try and complete the design of all of these downstream components and fund them as the designs have been completed. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of these project components now and where we're at with those. For those who know Ojai and have driven up Highway 33, there's a little road off to the left before you get up to Matilija Dam. It's called Camino Cielo. Interestingly enough, Camino Cielo actually goes up onto the ridge, and historically under the ridge and all the way to Santa Barbara. There's a road on top of Santa Barbara, Camino Cielo. Same road connects, used to connect. This bridge is not really a bridge, and this is what happens every time it rains. And then all the residents on the other side of the river end up parking and walking across this really cool little suspension footbridge to the other side. And then once the flows decrease, they get their own tractors out there and come in and shore it up so that they can get in and out and get back to town. Keep in mind that this is only for you know, a day or two max, and then the flows go down and fix the bridge again. But that's the way it's been for a long time. The project identified that we would have a significant amount of sediment coming down from Matilija Reservoir that would literally bury the bridge here. So this is the approximate elevation of where a new bridge would be constructed. And those initial conceptual designs and plans are completed, and moving forward, looking at completing the final design of those in the near future. The next stop downstream is the Robles Diversion Dam. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but here's the Ventura River flowing this way. And there's a kind of a timber wall that's underneath here. And then there's gates here that are closed off to trap the water and then divert flows down this canal that goes over to Lake Casitas. Approximately 23 to 30% of Casitas Reservoir water supply comes from this diversion dam. It diverts water from the Ventura River over into what was historically the Coyote Creek watershed. So the problem here, as you can see, this is after the fires, and you can see that this whole area, which is called the forebay, which is intended to trap sediment and prevent sediment from getting into the diversion canal, completely filled up. And they had to come in after the fact, just last year, came in and they excavated a large portion of this and put it down in this area of the river that's been eroded because due to lack of sediment. So it's kind of been an ongoing maintenance nightmare for Casitas Water District, and very much exacerbated when the fires came. A lot more sediment came down than usual. And with the dam removal, we're anticipating perhaps 2.5 times more sediment than normal coming down the Ventura River. In fact, that's the intent of the project, is restore the sediment supply out to the beaches. So we got to somehow resolve the issues here at Robles. And there is a technical subcommittee really just now getting started on looking at other case study examples from around the country and looking at ways to try and modernize and upgrade this facility to ensure our water supply is not disrupted. The Corps of Engineers plan had a proposed high flow sediment bypass, which was basically building another set of gates like this to let the higher flows through and flush the sediments through. A lot of the resource agencies were not really on board with such a big, giant, huge, expensive project. And so we're looking to see if there are other alternatives. So you can see on this area, you can see this is the diversion canal going this way, and the diversion is right here. So right downstream of that, there is, wow, I swear this is drawn in the wrong place. I didn't look at that. This is actually here. No, this should be here. This is Miners Oaks levee, the next one downstream right here. And then here's the other two levees downstream. Oh, I just noticed. No, that is correct. There's the diversion canal. And there's a diversion right there. So it's this community right here that is potentially threatened. And the initial studies, this is from the Corps studies, this shows basically the 100-year floodplain where water would be in a 100-year storm. And these are storms that happen theoretically once in 100 years, but would be perhaps more often with dam removal and with climate change. And the idea is putting in this big giant pink levee here that would keep the water in the river channel. So that levee has been in planning stages, and this was sort of the idea that this would be the levee, and these are actually pretty big structures. This is sort of 5 to 10 feet above the existing ground, but this is sort of 30 feet down. They got to get down to the level of where the river bottom could potentially meander over. So these are big giant structures with a big footprint because they have to excavate all the way out to here and to here. So these were the alternatives that they came up with, all straight along this alignment. And when I initially looked at the impact of that, I said, that's a huge, huge footprint. And sure enough, this was a tree survey. All of these dots right here, the blue dots and the pink dots, are all mature oaks and sycamores. They're right in the zone, and this entire red area would be dug out and excavated, and that big structure would be constructed there. My comment was, really you should have some other alternatives in the mix. All those alternatives have the same footprint and the same impact, which is a big, large impact. So this is a sketch that I put together, just kind of outlining an idea that I had for instead of building it all the way here, right in these people's backyard, build it out here and re-divert the river back into the channel over here while narrowing the forebay at Robles. So Robles and the Miners Oaks levee are now being considered more holistically and integrated, so that hopefully we can come up with some other alternatives and solutions that will mitigate the flood risk there. Now we're down in Oakview, and this is what's called the Live Oak levee. This was a photo from 2005. We had fairly big floods in 2005. And this is where the levee was. You can see this is the edge of the levee. This is rock with concrete, just kind of sticking it together. And this whole section of that levee unraveled and almost failed. If the flows had been much higher, they probably would have gone into these guys' backyards here. But fortunately it didn't. But that highlights the need for replacing this levee here And then also this bridge here, so Santa Ana Road Bridge. If you go into Oakview and turn left at the Shell station, you go across the Santa Ana Road Bridge. And so you can kind of see from this aerial diagram what's going on here. This is a pinch point in the river. You can see that the floodplain historically went all the way through where all these houses are built now. And this levee has redirected the flows and kept the flows in the Ventura River. This area, all of these levees were built after a flood. I think it was 69 or 77 or something. This whole neighborhood flooded and this levee went in. But it was sort of a quick and dirty, throw some rocks down and cement them together. So this is not a levee that's certified by the Army Corps of Engineers, which is important for flood insurance and for community safety. And then the bridge down here is so narrow that you can see from this picture, this is something every storm that comes through, the county has to go out there with their dozers and dig the sediment out from the river bottom to lower the river bottom so that the bridge doesn't overtop. You can see here how close in 2005 the flows got to the bottom of the bridge, and that's a real danger. So the plan here is that this bridge would be replaced with something that would span, instead of so you can see the rivers from here to here, it would expand it all the way over to here. So you're gaining this much river width through this reach by building a longer, wider bridge. The good news with that is this is one of the components that has been designed. So we have the engineering designs and plans. It's ready to go. We applied for a huge grant to California Department of Fish and Wildlife, who funded it to the tune of $13.5 million. So this project was initially slated to be actually starting construction this summer, but it looks like it's going to be next spring after the rainy season that this project will begin. And that's huge because that's a really big first step in removing the dam. We actually have one piece of it funded. A little bit further downstream here now is in Casita Springs, there's a levee. And if you guys ever have been up to Sulphur Mountain Road, which is right here, or just driven through Casita Springs, you know the river's right here. And this levee also was built after a flood. So one of the alternatives being considered here is potentially moving the levee back and reclaiming some of the floodplain here, which would be a good restoration opportunity, as well as potentially including moving the bike path onto here. Right now the bike path goes right along the highway through here. So it'd be nice if this bike path, which is along the river, away from the highway for a large chunk of the way between Foster Park and Ojai. So there's potentially an opportunity for some recreational benefits as well as flood control benefits with that project. And then finally out at the coast, we got another small grant. NIFWF is the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and they funded a study on changes of the coast, and really sort of a good news, bad news thing. They included modeling of large swells and sea level rise, and they found that yes, we would get more sand on the beach, but they didn't think that it was going to overwhelm the system. So the good news is it wouldn't overwhelm the dredge down in Pierpont. But the bad news is it wouldn't do, I think, what we saw at the Elwha Rivermouth, which has always kind of been our hope and vision, is that, this was actually unexpected and not really part of the initial plans for Elwha. They were really looking at restoring historically amazing salmon run on the Elwha River, which is in the Olympic National Park up in Washington State. But it turned out that the scientists started monitoring the shoreline conditions, and it's now really become a case study for coastal restoration from dam removal. And I would hope that we would see at least some of those kind of benefits with the removal of Matilija Dam. Obviously, that's what got me interested in the first place. Like I said, back at the beach here is this river delta that is fed by the sediment from the river that is so important to restore the ecosystem through dam removal. And Cynthia, I didn't see on this evening, but Cynthia for a long time did a lot of really cool maps for me using GIS. And this was one that we made of the dam removal project. You can see the 2 holes in the dam right here. And then each of these project components labeled downstream. So once again, just emphasizing that we're looking at all of this steelhead habitat to be restored through access, removing that major barrier to steelhead passage, and the sediment supply all the way down to the beach, as well as really a lot of these projects are, I view as resilience projects to climate change and to potential floods in the future, safety for the community, and all of that is part of this large watershed-wide vision for the dam removal. This was from 2016. At that point, there'd been over $27 million spent on the dam removal project. We had a bunch of paper and reports, but hadn't made a whole lot of progress other than Arundo removal and a couple of trailheads that were built as part of a grant. In fact, this grant, $6.2 million, went into Arundo. And in 2016, we put together a funding plan, estimated, how much the project might cost, and really 150 million sort of ballpark. I think we're over that now. Every year that goes by, costs go up and things get more expensive and projects get more and more complicated. So, but the really good news is that we've been writing grants. So we've gotten a total now of over $22 million, including most recently a $5 million grant to enhance the final design, the final engineering of some of those levees and bridges. We did commission a report from the Bay Area Council on Economic, and they went and did a job and stimulus benefits of Matilija Dam removal. We really put this together in anticipation of some of the potential stimulus funding that might come down the road. We were looking at potentially 2,300 jobs and $350 million in economic output from sort of a $165 million project. So we have that from a reputable source to use in grant applications now for to demonstrate our economic impact. So just looking at this aerial overview of the dam, a lot of you have seen this, it was on the poster, but I had a great, amazing volunteer, really, really good at Photoshop, and I kind of drew her a sketch and she went and did it exactly the way I thought the first try. So this is sort of the before and after the vision for a free-running Ventura River after the Matilija Dam is removed. And you can see that we were always anticipating the river to meander this way, kind of the way that those photos that I was showing of the reservoir. There was a recreation plan done under the Army Corps project, and we kind of started mapping out some trails and areas that could be future access. Right now, it's all county in-holdings within the national forest. And so this area is all national forest around the sides, and the reservoir area is the county. So the hope was always that this could be turned back into access, public access and recreation area, and a great place to really witness the the changes that will unfurl as the ecosystem starts to restore itself. Many of you have seen these maps around the place. We put a lot of effort into this over 5 or 6 year period with the Friends of the Ventura River. And I do encourage you, if you're not familiar with the Ventura River, to get out there, get on your bike, get up and hike in the Ventura River Preserve up in the Miners Oaks area, which is amazing right now. And really take advantage of, you know, what we have up here, and understand when you walk out in the river bottom, you can see all that sand and sediment that ultimately will be on our beaches. If you get the Surfrider emails, you always see a lot of times it says Paul's blog. So venturariver.org has a whole bunch of information about this project. And we are also doing ongoing updates to the Ventura Watershed Council. And you can see that there is a meeting coming up a month from now on October 1st during the day. If you're available and you want to do another Zoom call, there's an opportunity to hear more details on this from the County of Ventura, the engineers, and from our funding organizer. I just wanted to finish by saying that, you know, all good grassroots campaigns start with a bumper sticker. And this was the bumper sticker that our chapter put together back in 1995. And for a long time, there's a lot of these around. Most of those cars are probably crushed now, but it's 25 years ago. You know, when the scissors went up and the campaign got rejuvenated, we thought it was time for a new bumper sticker and a new rejuvenated campaign. And a lot of you already have these, but I still have right here in my office, and I don't know how to get out to anybody right now. There's some in the Surfrider office, but we have stickers like this that you've seen around. Interestingly enough, there's a Dam Removal Europe campaign. They're looking at trying to remove dams in Europe, and they adopted the scissors. So this is technically now an international symbol for dam removal. All right. I don't know how long that was. You guys are probably really sick of hearing me talk, but
that was awesome, Paul. Super informative as always, man. That's great. And I love the scissors design. I saw it today at two totally random places. It's so iconic. So good work with all that.
Awesome.
I don't see, why don't you stop sharing your screen, and if everybody wants to go on gallery view, we can see each other a little bit better. I don't see any questions in the chat box, but I'm going to test my luck here and encourage people to unmute themselves if they want to ask a question. So feel free, or raise your hand and I can mute you if you like.
Test your luck. That's classic. I have a question. Can I raise my hand?
Go for it.
Okay. So Paul, where are you? There you are. Okay. So did you ever have to pivot? Like, I know the Thomas Fire sediment changed the trajectory that you were on in that moment. And the levees that you talk about, I mean, it's a little, for me, intimidating, but did you ever have to pivot in such a way where you went, holy crap, now what? Or were you just like, hey, we got this?
The amazing thing about the Thomas Fire, as I kind of alluded to, and I posted on my blog, there's some pictures of it, it was so rejuvenating. The Ventura River is like I've never seen it, you know, in the 20 years that I've been looking at it. Although the initial effects were pretty devastating, we have seen more flows in the river because there's less vegetation in the watershed, and more is able to sink in and feed water. So the river has come back to life in ways that I could never have imagined. And it has really shown me, number one, the capacity of the river to transport sediment is, that's what rivers do. I mean, we think of rivers as water, but rivers are really conveyor belts for sediment. And it's amazing to see all that sediment be handled so nicely, and you know, there's sandbars and beaches and stuff on the Ventura River, like it's unbelievable right now. And so I'm thinking now, I mean, we've always kind of wondered, what would it look like with dam removal? What's really going to happen? And I think that the renewed sediment is going to be, you know, a permanent change. From the Thomas fire, what's going to happen is that sediment is going to move on through the system, and it'll be all out on the beaches and gone in, you know, the next decade. Whereas with Matilija Canyon opened up, there'll be a constant supply of sediment coming down, and the river, I think, will be much more resilient and much more alive for a long time to come. And that's the hope, and I think that's what the fire really showed me.
So it'll adapt.
Nature, nature knows what to do. We just got to get out of the way.
Right. That bridge that you showed with when the residents are parked on the other side of the creek, and then they walk across the bridge to their homes. I mean, I want to see that for sure, but I just can't imagine that I know it's not like every winter or every minute of every winter, but it's like such a remarkable thing to know that this is your life, you know?
Yeah, and like I said, it's just for a day or two, and they're able to like pile boulders back in there and get their bridge back to work before the county crews come out, you know, a couple of weeks or whatever later to fix it.
So are they in a flood zone, technically?
There are a couple of properties that are, and that's a concern too. We've actually been trying to acquire a couple of those properties, and that's another piece that I didn't mention.
Wow.
That was going to be my question, Paul, is it seems so obvious from this perspective that they, A, shouldn't have built in a floodplain to begin with, but B, that something needs to be done for the residents. Do you generally get support from the people who are living in those areas that are either in the 100-year floodplain or that are just continuously impacted from these storms? I mean, you get a lot of support from us, but what are the people thinking who live in these areas that are constantly impacted? Do they not want some sort of solution out of this, or are they mostly trying to protect their property, as we see in a lot of cases?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting, you know, kind of a mixed bag, and it's definitely one of the, you know, public outreach pieces that we haven't fully locked our teeth into yet, because we still don't have any plans. And that's why I'm trying to get a better solution for the Miners Oaks levee, because the residents there currently, they got a little bit of flooding in 1969, and that was really a result of the diversion dam that was upstream. And the ones that I've spoken with don't believe that, you know, they're as badly at risk as the flood maps, you know, would say. So some of them would rather not see a large wall with no trees and a road on top for the county to drive by their backyards all the time. So it'll be a big change, and that's why I've been constantly advocating that be as environmentally sensitive and naturalized as possible, to where the designs that they have are now buried to some degree, where they would allow soil on top and vegetation to some degree. But these, you know, each one of these project components is like a major project in itself, with so many nuances and complexities, like you're talking about, and community concerns. So yeah, good question, and it's an ongoing process. I'm going to turn my light on so you can see.
There you go.
Sorry.
So we were wondering, and I thought of this today too, Paul, is how on earth do we get the stickers out to people that really want to have them? And I think the best thing to do is to just create an outreach, like Dropbox, where we could. So Cassie's our staff member, Cassie, if she's that way. So she is info@ventura.surfrider.org, info@ventura.surfrider.org. And if you guys want a sticker You just email Cassie or myself, chair@ventura.surfrider.org. We will try to get you a sticker. And it's the coolest thing ever when you're on the highway and you're seeing a car you do not know and you see the Matilija sticker on, like, the scissors. You see the scissors on the car. It's like super cool. One day I was like so impressed. I was so excited. And then I realized it was Paul. So, but that was just the one time. So anyway, but no, it's like awesome to have that scissor sticker on your car. So we will get you your scissor sticker when we can.
I saw somebody in Orange County with it, and I was driving like a maniac trying to get a photo of it because I was like, oh, it's so cool. It's the scissors, Orange County. They probably thought I was insane. It's fine. But yeah, I'd be happy if anybody wants one. I can figure out a way to drop it off to you, figure it out. We have them
Mail
at the
it.
office.
We'll mail it for sure. Yeah. Yeah. We got to keep this thing going. Keep the momentum, keep the enthusiasm, keep our mission going. I mean, you know, COVID slowed us down, but we really need to just figure out how to get around it. No more questions?
Hold on a second. I see a couple came in to me. With the Santa Ana Bridge revision starting in spring, will the through traffic need to be routed through another road, Paul?
I can't bring the picture up too closely, but if you look, there was 2 alignments there. One was a new bridge and one was the old bridge. The old bridge will remain in place until that new bridge is completed. So there'll be, they actually designed it that way so they won't have to, you know, otherwise you'd have to divert traffic 10 miles around the corner.
Yeah, exactly. And then what are your thoughts on the reintroduction of the beaver into the Ventura watershed?
Beaver, oh,
For real?
for real. I was just talking about what the river looks like now with all that water and all of that new riparian vegetation. And I'm always imagining what it would look like with beavers. And this is, it's an interesting thing that, you know, I actually tried to put it on the project list for the Ventura River Watershed Plan. And unfortunately, I was not there when they, I missed the meeting when they brought it up after I had put it on the list, and they kind of laughed it out of the room. And who is this nutcase? But I've got to update a blog post on this soon because there's a lot of new emerging science on how beavers interact with the ecosystems and how literally, you know, the first thing that we did to these watersheds before anybody came in and planted trees and started sucking the aquifers dry were kill all the beavers. Before the gold rush, there was a fur rush. And those fur trappers were the first people to come in through these wild parts. And a lot of people for a long time didn't believe that there were actually historically beavers in California, but the science is there now to demonstrate. And in areas where they have reintroduced beavers, they have literally taken a dry creek and made it flow year round on various ranch properties in Nevada and Utah and other places. It's amazing. So it is a real thing. Yeah. Take out the concrete and bring back the beaver.
Well, you know, we know that no matter what happens or how long it takes, I'm really sorry about that. You will handle it. We have so much faith in you, 100%.
No doubt. All right. Any other questions out there? Feel free to unmute yourself or put your hand up. One of the benefits of doing these online Zoom meetings is that they are easier to record. So I've been recording tonight so we can put it on our YouTube channel and share with other people who weren't able to make it. So that's one small silver lining to what's happening here. And I don't see any other questions out there, so let's go ahead and wrap it up. Paul and Laura, do you have any final statements?
I don't. I just want to just say, Paul, honestly, we do not know what we would do without you. We appreciate you. We value you. You are a legend. Not just to our chapter, but like to our community and everything you've done, like 100%, no doubt. And we all feel the same way. So thank you.
Well, likewise, Laura, I thank you for everything you've done for
Aw.
been amazing. And really, our chapter has grown and thrived since we've been taking lead here. So,
Thank you.
this is
Thanks.
this is teamwork. It's not about me.
Yeah, true. 100%.
All of us. It's way too much of a load. In fact, it's funny. I was talking to somebody today. I said, this project is driving me crazy. He says, you mean more crazy?
Right?
I must have been crazy to take it on in the first place.
The heavy lifting, you've done the heavy lifting. And I think in hindsight, you've so many years down the road, and the value, how interconnected, the way you started out with the managed retreat and Surfers Point, and you connected why we care about the dam versus what's happening to the shoreline. And those two huge accomplishments for our community, not just our chapter. I mean, the value that those have, and the Ventura River ecosystem, for you to bring that to light environmentally is such an important issue, not just for you as an engineer, but for us as people, recognizing how interconnected our waterways are with our ocean, and with or without a dam.
Hey, Paul, I did see one more question come in. It's actually something I was going to ask. I was multitasking earlier and thought I might have missed it in your presentation. But do you have a timeline for when the dam may actually be down? I know it's that $1 million question that always seems to be a moving target. But what's the latest on that?
Yeah, it's a moving target, and it keeps getting further away. But I am still optimistic, cautiously optimistic, that in the next decade that we can get it done. We will have to wait for weather. In other words, we don't need that big flow. Once we're all set up, we'll need that big flow, and hopefully we won't go into a 20-year drought and never see it,
Right.
But the bigger variables, I think, are just coming to agreement on what to do at Robles and how to deal with these levees. And in the meantime, we've got such momentum with the funding that I think the funding is on a really strong path right now. So it's come a long way in the last 4 years since that 2016, when we finally came to agreement on, what to do.
That's
Gotcha,
amazing.
yeah. Thanks for that. Well, there's a saying in Surfrider, constant pressure endlessly applied. So, I mean, that seems to be fitting here.
Bill, this is Christy Weir.
Go for it.
My name says Lydia, but it's not.
It does, Lydia. It says Lydia.
It always confuses people. It's a long story. But I just want to say thank you to all of you, Bill and Laura and Paul, because the city, I'm speaking for the community now and the city government. It's a great partnership with Surfrider, and we couldn't do it without you. And in terms of all that you do, Surfers Point, the cleanups, the dam, I mean, everything, it matters. And as I talk to people online and in person now, it's seeming to matter more to them. Honestly, people are getting a little bit more educated and a little more sensitive to our environment. And you guys are doing a fantastic job, and keep up the good work. And we will retain that partnership, hopefully going forward as we have elections coming up in our city. It's an important election. And to me, it's one of the most important things we do is keep in mind with our city decisions, how they impact our environment. And you are all at the forefront of educating all of us about how every single thing we do impacts, from the plastics to everything else. So congratulations on all your successes. And Paul, I learned something every time I've heard this presentation several times. But I learned something new every time. So thanks for all your work.
Thank you. Thank you, Christy. We appreciate the support, 100%.
Good.
Yeah.
Another quick question came in, Paul, you know, kind of along those lines. How much do the elections influence the national dam removals?
That's an interesting question. You know, a lot of the funding that we were originally looking for was through the Army Corps, and Congress had passed a rule saying no new starts on any new projects nationwide, and that was the Tea Party Congress that was in there, you know, a decade ago, and I think it's probably worse off now. But we're looking at what's called the NRCS, the National Resource Conservation District, which is funded through the Farm Bill, and we're just embarking right now on looking at funding through the Farm Bill for rural communities and agricultural water supply, which is, you know, a lot of what happens in our watershed. How that will be affected by politics, I don't know. The other thing is that if we were to have something along the lines of a Green New Deal and really turn the country around and look at our deficient infrastructure and look at these community issues, I think that we would be in a really good position to get federal funding for something like that. But having said all that, to date, you know, the huge majority of the funding that we have gotten to date is from the state of California. And those state agencies recognize that this is not only really important to our community, but important to the state of California in terms of restoring endangered fish, restoring these habitats, and you know, really demonstrating that we can get this done in California.
Great. One more local question popped in I'd like to hear about too. Do you see the dam removal affecting the barrier at Foster Park? And I wonder if that, you know, barrier is like that concrete structure right by the picnic tables, or is there a different barrier, Paul, that's there at Foster Park?
I assume that what's been referred to as the subsurface dam that's been there since, you know, early 1900s, I think it was built. It goes down about 80 feet down to bedrock. No, I don't think it would impact that structure. More sediment, you know, would probably be good in terms of actually burying it a little bit. Right now it's pretty exposed and gets kind of beat up when big boulders come through. But yeah, Foster Park is a really important part of the river because it's part of what's known as the live reach, which historically has had perennial flows and is a place where steelhead can over summer and survive the drought because a lot of sections of the river upstream go dry.
Yeah, I was down at Big Rock this weekend with the kids, and it was awesome seeing the fish at their toes nibbing away and stuff. So good to see some life in the river down there.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, that's all I see for questions out there. Thank you again, Paul. We appreciate everything you do. Thanks, Laura, for everything you do as well. Cassie and the rest of the crew. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Stay safe out there, and remember about those solo beach cleanups. We'll probably need it after the hot weather and the beach use this weekend. So have fun, stay safe out there, and we'll get this recording up on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days. Take care, everybody. See ya.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you, everybody.